Welcome everyone to Creative Circles. This is the third in a three-part series, so the final in the three-part series of our kind of taking stock, making moves, and thinking forward series, which is kind of off the back of our new Raise Your Game program, which is looking at the future of digital skills and best practice for creatives in the creative industries. So if you haven't checked out our course, we'll do some announcements about that later. We've got some more courses ready and waiting for ticket booking. So take a look at that when you get a chance. But we're here today with Nathan and Dave from CreateFuture. Welcome, folks. Lovely to have you. I would do a kind of whistle-stop tour on CreateFuture, but I really think you're the best to introduce it. So I would love to open the floor to you folks. Tell us about CreateFuture.
So we'll do that. Let's introduce ourselves first. Yes,
yes,
I'm Nathan. I'm the strategy director and one of the three founders of CreateFuture. Dave is the second part of that.
Hey, I'm Dave Ward. I'm the creative director at CreateFuture.
And the third is Jessica Mallon, who's far too busy running the business. She's our managing director, so she's off in that. So, but I'm sure she says hello as well. So. And yeah, delighted to be here. It's really nice to see. Actually, it's really nice to put faces to so many names. I see sort of little names in the Creative Edinburgh community, and yeah, never really recognized you. So hello, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah. So you're going to ask, so CreateFuture.
Yes, tell us about CreateFuture. How did it all start? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you the bio, and then Dave can maybe backtrack and talk a little bit about our kind of our history. So we're a design and innovation company. We're based in, well, we've got a studio, which I'm in all on my own. So if an Amazon delivery comes, I apologize, I'm going to have to go and get the door. A studio in Leith. We're 5 years old. We've just turned 5. We work across brand, proposition and experience challenges for a range of companies and brands across the UK, Europe and the US. And I'll save a lot of the hows and the whys and stuff for now, but that's the bare bones of it. I would say we're about 14 strong as well, a mix of creatives, designers, strategic thinkers, and people who help us delivering all of the work. The origin story, Dave.
The origin story. I'll just do the same. I've 2 little girls that at some point are going to come bursting through that. You can take bets on what time marker it'll happen, but it's guaranteed.
Yeah, we did drag queen bingo on Friday night for our 5th birthday, and the girls were like livid that they weren't allowed in the room for that. They were literally climbing in through the window to try and.
I totally let them, but I think my 6-year-old is just at that point where she repeats everything, and I think some of the language was perhaps a little bit.
Yeah, it was a bit. Yeah.
But you had fun. But tell us how it all started.
Well, so the three of us all worked in. If you guys are in Scotland, you might remember an agency called Realise, which was one of the biggest digital agencies at the point in time in which we were in it. And Nathan was in innovation and strategy and a bit of new business. I came in as a senior designer and worked my way up to creative director, and Jessica was head of client services, and we were all chums. We got on quite well, which is usually a good start. But we all went off in our separate directions. So Nathan went off to Tyburn, and Jessica went to the service design company Nile, and I went down to London to set up the Realise London office. And then we decided that it was probably time to start chatting to each other. So, every time we met up, there were little chats. Should we, would we, could we? As you get older, the risks get a little bit higher. So I kind of thought, right, well, it's either now or never. And this was 5 years ago. In fact, 5 years ago, almost to the day. So when we came together, it was because Nathan had gone off to brand, because Jessica had gone off to service design, and because I had sort of stayed in digital design. The key question was really what we were going to do. And that really should be led by a little bit of your heart or what you want to do, but also a little bit of what the industry needed and wanted at the time. And 5 years ago, we really were seeing this switch from agencies towards consultancies being in the market, towards digital being less about marketing websites, which of course still existed, but more towards products, so banking apps, etc. And and really the key thing for us was the methodologies that were needed in order to do that. So the ways of working where previously you would have gotten a brief and you were really, really good with your brief inside a client, and you would have brought to your agency and said, okay, go and make that, and then come back in lots of iterations. You can't really do that with product because it's very iterative, and you're constantly evolving, and it's something that's so close to the core of what this does. It's your core capability, your banking, and you wouldn't outsource your branch. So it needs to be a much closer design relationship with the people that you work with. So we pretty much, this sounds great in hindsight. Trust me, it was a lot sketchier whenever we did it. We went, right, that's designed from the ground up. What should a relationship be like for companies that are looking to bring in an outside consultancy or agency? And by the way, we call ourselves a design and innovation company to get around that awful conundrum of, are you an agency or are you a consultancy? Because we're somewhere in the middle, and we dare not call ourselves a agency. That just makes sense.
But I think those I think the how, that question we were asking ourselves of like whether this could be done better was a really important driver for us. The status quo, we were all in good jobs and with really good agencies, but I think we were all quite frustrated with sometimes how slow and sometimes how distant, I guess, the people who were actually doing the work, the creatives, were from the problems in the client's business. So, we'll chat a little bit about principles and the values, but they haven't really changed. They were, to try and work fast, to really get to the heart of the problem, quickly, and solve the hardest part first is something we always used to sort of say, and then we can backtrack and work on the details once we've got something that we know is likely to work. And one of the most important ways that you can work fast is, apart from having, bringing really experienced people together from both sides of the team, from our team and our network as well, we'll come on to that, and the client, but is to collaborate really closely. As Dave was saying, not to take a problem away, work on it in isolation, but to kind of bring a team together of everybody that's involved and that's vested in the solution. And that often includes customers as well. And to collaborate on a solution. And that's got so many other benefits as well. The team then that you're working with, they know often what's needed. They just need the support in getting it realized. But equally, if they're involved in the design of something, then they are invested in its long-term success. They really want to see it succeed. And the third value, that we really wanted to do was fun, was just have some fun with what we were doing. We, as Dave said, with chums, we kind of, mind you, I don't think he's ever called me a chum before. I'm not sure where that word's come from. So we're pals. We're like, we get on well, and we spend 35, 40 hours a week, doing this on a good week. So it was about, can we enjoy what we're doing and build relationships with each other, with the people that we employ, but really crucially with the people that we work with, really close relationships, fun relationships that that we get a lot of enjoyment out of, and enjoyment out of our craft and enjoyment out of our work. So when we say fun, sometimes I think people think we mean like banter, or it's wacky, or we come in and we're sort of like it's like super full of energy. It is always going to try and bring that kind of positive energy, but it's more the fun that you get, I think, in giving yourself the time and the space to work on something meaningful. That joy that you get when you get in the flow, and particularly when you've got a bunch of people who are all on the same page and it all clicks, and everybody's really forgets about all of the crap that's going on in the rest of their working day, but they're just really focused on this one challenge and really enjoying it and enjoying the work we do. So we were really keen to see if through exploring different ways of working, we could foster that kind of experience with our clients.
It sounds like a really enveloping way of working, kind of really bringing everyone into the experience, all the team, the clients, making sure that conversation is happening. And like you say, that dialogue, trying to kind of make them part of the process as well, and not keeping it not making it a separated thing.
That was really important to us, and that's absolutely spot on. I mean, for starters, it was a necessity, because when we started, we were only 3 people, and we always set ourselves out to work on big challenges. We've always worked with companies with a national or an international remit. We qualify really hard on that front, and because we've been around quite a while, we've been trusted with quite serious challenges. So we couldn't do it just the 3 of us. So it was about kind of collaborating closely with clients, but also about bringing in a great network. And the Creative Edinburgh network has been invaluable to us. We've collaborated with so many great creatives and copywriters and so on from the community over the years. So it was a necessity, but it's not without its challenges as well. Sometimes you'll come into an organization where they do still want that old school way of just punting something over, and they're actually a little, not affronted, but sometimes afraid of opening themselves up and to the process and being involved in the process. People, and most commonly it's kind of a bit of fear that they're going to be asked to be creative.
I was going to say, it's kind of that vulnerability that people kind of offer up to the process, and I think when you're coming at it from as a business as well, it kind of feels like that's the new experience, I think, for a lot of these relationships, is that it goes beyond what it looks like on paper or what makes money. It's more about the values, the big whys. So we're definitely getting a sense of kind of what CreateFuture is about kind of internally. I wonder kind of what is with everything that we've experienced in the last year, with these methods that you've been using, with this kind of practice that you've built over the last 5 years, congratulations, by the way. But we're now in 2021, surviving a really difficult year that I think everyone in this room will very much kind of be still reeling at and kind of rolling their eyes. Oh, we're still talking about this thing, and it's affecting people a lot. But how have you guys come out of it, and what have you learned from that? And I guess there's a few facets to that. There's the commercial aspects, there's the personal aspects and creative aspects of that. But it'd be great to hear and share that if you can.
Yeah. So I think there's probably a little hole in the knowledge of some of the folk that's listening about what we mean whenever we talk about working creatively or collaboratively with the client, and that's going to lead on to the problems that happened whenever COVID hit. So whenever we started, as Nathan said, there was 3 of us. We wanted to work deeply collaboratively with the clients. We wanted to work really fast, and we wanted to have fun. The fun part is really about whenever the company has a problem. Sorry, let me bring it back. We found a process called the Google Sprint process, or Google Ventures Sprint process. Google Ventures are the investment arm of Google in startups, usually late stage startups. And they'll say to them, okay, whenever they've invested, the first question they ask is, what's the one thing that's holding you back? The book is fantastic, by the way. It's still as good today as it was 5 years ago whenever we started playing with it. Nathan was wondering where all of our sprint books went from the studio. I've stolen them all. These guys looked at practices called design thinking, which is what's taught in Stanford to MBAs about using the designer's toolkit in order to solve business problems. And so the idea behind that sprint methodology is that you've got 5 days. You say, what's the problem that's holding the business back? And the Google Venture Sprint team would go in, and in 5 days, they would go through the design thinking process. So there's 5 stages to the design thinking process, and they would do 1 on each day. So the first day, they would make sure they were answering, they would know what is the question that they're trying to answer and make sure there's alignment inside the organization. The next day, they're going out and talking to the users or the customers, and they're looking at analogous insight. On the 3rd day, they're starting to ideate, okay, what are wild, innovative ways that we could fix this? And really that's about removing some of the restrictions that you usually get whenever you're inside an organization and you're in a process which is quite iterative and slow. You're always going to get someone who puts their hand up and go, I've tried that before, or that'll never work because of X. This is really about trying to remove some of those restrictions and move forward. Day 4, you're creating a prototype, and day 5, you're testing it with 5 real customers, which is mind-blowing. if you've never gone through a creative process like that, at the end of 5 days, you have a physical tested prototype drawn from insight, and at 2 points, you've actually talked to the end customer. Whenever you present that back into your organization, they usually can't believe it. And that's where we started from. We started from going in and doing that. And we started hearing from the people we're working with. And these were, as Nathan says, national remit. It was guys like Penguin Random House, Expedia, Hyman's Robertson, big pension consultancies. They were all in the first year. And they were using terms about, it's like, God, you guys are like a SWAT team, or you're like a catalyst. You know, these are things that we've found hard to break through for a long time now. And you've kind of broken through, you've shown us the way to do it. And we like to say, you know, it's really often they had it inside them, but you're bringing that creative energy, as Nathan called it, you can kind of wrap it up in fun. But that energy and that belief that change is possible is the most important thing often that CreateFuture bring. You know, it's that breaking point. It's like, okay, now there's this ball of energy, we can make things happen. And then, of course, we move into design definition, where we prove that it's possible to happen, because that's the next thing, as you start to hit those barriers again of, okay, but, you know, could we build it? Could we afford to build it? Would the market really want it? Et cetera, et cetera. You know, you start to build out from that central core. And then COVID hit. And all of a sudden, we couldn't get in a room for 5 days with people. We couldn't spend that time and that energy that was so necessary to get people to believe that change was possible, and to get them to imagine the future that we're going to create for them, became extremely difficult. So we spent 5 days physically in their space. We would fly to their offices, or they would come to our place in Leith, and we'd run that process with them. Now, instead of 5-6 hours a day in a physical space together, you hit the limitations of Zoom, which is 2 hours. 2 hours, people's brains just go boom. And as Nathan says, the postman's about to walk into his room. My kids are about to burst through here. All of the feeling that you get from being around other human beings starts to become quite hard. You might find, you'll genuinely find in a sprint sometimes, that maybe Nathan this morning was stuck in traffic getting in, and he's a bit, he's not himself. And you'll feel that whenever you're physically beside each other. You won't feel that whenever you're on a Zoom call. So we started immediately to hit both emotional, how do we actually get the same feeling, and the rational problems of how do we run the process whenever we can't get people for more than 2 hours on a screen, and technology on top of that. So we have a giant wall-size ceramic whiteboard in our studio. And Nathan behind there, you can see it's hipster brick and giant tables, and we've got great coffee and all of the stuff that makes people think that they're in a creative environment. Now they're in their bedroom or their kitchen. They don't often feel that way. So we rebuilt it from the ground up last year, which was pretty crazy.
We were halfway through sprints, we were halfway through projects, so we had to do this on the fly. When all of a sudden clients are saying, you just can't come in tomorrow. So, right, okay, but we still need to deliver this work. So it was kind of crazy. Yeah,
well, I mean, to shortcut it, we just took our design thing. We've grown out from the sprint book. We're now using a very wide, broad design thinking approaches and mixing them with more classical approaches. But we just had to redesign them. And very quickly, because as Nathan says, the necessity of planned projects that were in flight, we had to do it quickly. And clients, luckily, were dealing with the same problems themselves and were quite understanding. And so we took our frameworks and our process and said, okay, how can these be done in 2 hour blocks rather than in 1 to 5 days in a physical office? And we ended up, Nathan, remind me, how many people did we have for RBS on a?
A few hundred, can't remember, across the UK and India, doing sort of 35 teams doing sprints in parallel. So,
and then Beam Centauri, who are guys that drinks manufacture, Bowmore and Maker's Mark and Sipsmith and stuff like that. We would do creative sessions with them in physical, and it would have been about maybe 10 people. well, they saw it differently. They went, wait a minute, we don't have to fly people around the world to do these sessions with you. Let's open it up to anyone in the world. And we ended up with 40 people on creative sessions from 5 different countries, which brought new things that we didn't know. We had to totally start from scratch again. But God, how on earth do you do this with that many people in that many time zones?
So I think, sorry, just really quickly, that I think one of the important things we learned though is, you know, we talked about those values of, like, you know, from fast and collaborative, and the processes underpinning of user-centered design and design thinking, and this belief in nurturing creativity in people. All of those became more important, like last year, and actually they really showed their importance. Like principles and values, like they're only really worth it if you live them and if they guide you through difficult decisions. You know, otherwise they're just words on a piece of paper. And actually we did let them drift a little bit. You know, we practically thought, how could we do stuff while forgetting to make it fun, you know, or to work fast, you know, or to nurture this creative belief. So actually we had to keep coming back to those values and those principles and try harder. I think, like, how can we bring these values to life now with all of these constraints? And actually, once we kept coming back to those, everyone had a better experience and we got better results.
That's really great to hear.
There,
no, not at all. No, it's great to kind of hear how it's landed. And I wonder how, I've got a few questions about kind of what's next, but I'd like to know, how has it affected your business commercially?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you've been able to bring more people on board, but in sessions, but has it changed the conversation or the way that you're kind of working with those more commercial clients?
It has, and it will continue to, I think, as Dave suggested. You know, there's a very good environmental and financial reasons now for not flying either us across to Singapore, as has happened in the past, or from flying people from all over the world to Leith, as has happened in the past, to come and work with us. You know, so I absolutely think there's a downside in that we won't get to go to Madrid or Singapore as often as we will, you know, because, you know, we do enjoy the travel, but there's an upside in that it's really opened up markets to anywhere now, you know, and we can bring more people into the process, you know. So, you know, if you're thinking this a week-long process, it'd be fantastic to have, you know, a store manager from Sydney involved. You know, we can do that now, and it's, you know, people, and it's just accepted. So I think it's definitely opened up a lot. Commercially, we've had an okay year. We've put on a little bit of growth. We've made some changes, quite a lot of changes behind the scenes while we've been delivering. We've got a really great team in place. We're doing a bit of work on our kind of brand, our proposition, and we're going out now as the markets and stuff start to open up to try and accelerate that growth over the next year. And that the growth is really important because it allows us to bring in more people. You know, it allows us to bring in, you know, more designers, you know, more strategic thinkers. It grows our kind of capability. It allows us to learn from them and to do more work. So I'm really excited about the next year. There was, if you look back, it was about 3 months where everything was just up in the air and clients were, you know, just literally firefighting. Then there was the projects that were in flight sort of came back online. You know, and then I would say in the last three months or something, 6 months, all clients are thinking forward. And a lot of the work that we're doing often is like, you know, how do they react now to this new world, you know, of you know, we're working with a large law firm at the moment, you know, in how do they do hybrid meetings and engagements, you know, how do they deliver an incredible experience to their clients when, you know, half of you in the room and half of you are dialing in. And that's actually more tricky than whether you're all in a room or you're all online. And that's just one example. So most of our clients now, whether they're in retail or a service industry, are trying to figure out how they do business in this new reality now. So,
yeah. The other bit that's just been really hard has been getting out and finding new work. I'm sure everyone that's on the call has found the same, if that's part of your job. Is it, you know, it's a people business. You know, design creativity is you buy people to solve a problem, and not getting out and meeting new people has been really hard. So we've been doing our own breakfast sessions, sessions a little bit like this, where we bring in people from other companies, and that's been good at getting us out there. But that's been the hardest part, I think, is actually just growing your network. Things like Creative Edinburgh for staying strong through it, and finding new work, and also just the value that you get in talking to other people to self-reflect and plan, you know, your future. You know, you can't do it in isolation. So that's been the tricky part too.
Definitely. I mean, the networking side of it, we've been seeing that with all our interactions this past year as well. It's that connectivity, being able to be in the room, or, you know, in a sense of a room with people, having a conversation about new things that maybe are not thought through yet. That's important to articulate. So it's great that there's more spaces that are being created. Is that something that you think you'll keep doing?
Yes. What we'll probably try and do is I kind of think of it a little bit like the analogy of restaurants that have learned how to do deliveries really well, you know, that previously didn't do it. That they'd be mad to give that up now that they've learned how to do it. There's so much that we've learned in such a short space of time in the last year that we'll carry on.
I personally miss the tiny croissants, so we absolutely will be doing in-person events.
So there may be a blended approach then,
exactly.
if we're using that term. Yeah, well, I hope that all kind of progresses in that way. We're moving forward. Yes, the pastries. Yeah, always so important, right?
Yeah, totally.
And good coffee, which we know you guys have already. I have one more question for you, just as we're coming towards the end of this session. We're thinking more about, obviously, how we can take the learnings of what businesses, creative agencies, creative individuals, freelancers have learned in the last year of how to use their resilience as creatives to keep going in their businesses, and to, you know, think forward and think about the possibilities that lie within their practice. And we've had a lot of conversations at Creative Edinburgh around, you know, the use of data and information that you hold within your practice, and how to use that to the best of your abilities as an asset to kind of really show off what you're doing, or create more value in what you're doing, or share your value. I wonder, kind of, if you're thinking about CreateFuture and the people that you work with and the creative industries maybe as a whole as you see it, what do you think the future of creative industries could look like to you? I mean, is there, I mean, we're moving towards collaboration, but are there other things that you're picking up on that maybe are not being talked about yet, or we're not seeing?
Yeah, I said before, you know, how much I value the Creative Edinburgh kind of community, and, you know, the fact that I can go to one place and find like a sign maker, you know, or an upholsterer, or, you know, whatever it is that we kind of need. So, and I think our model is not unique. You know, what we're actually seeing is, you know, the rise of kind of boutique creative agencies rather than large networked ones. There'll always be a role for kind of the large consultancies and the networked agencies, but there is a rise of kind of boutique collectives almost, you know, who draw on, you know, individual, you know, rock stars or experts or artisans and craftspeople. So I think the importance of building your profile and your network and connecting with people outside of your industry is more important than ever. And you know, kind of hope, you know, in keeping the eye out for those collaboration opportunities. The other thing we talked about, so when we caught up last week, we were just talking, I think, about just the value and the importance of balancing your creative practice with that strategic and pragmatic and maybe business-led approach, you know, of and design thinking is a great tool for that, you know, of working through those steps of, you know, what am I trying to achieve here? What are the blockers? What's my audience? You know, what, can I go wide in everything that's possible, then narrow in on the solution, test early, test often. You know, I think taking the same pragmatic and sometimes commercially driven approach, like, you know, to your practice, can actually be quite freeing, you know, understanding that. And then, right, within these constraints that I understand that, you know, now I'm going to fly, you know, and I'll sing, you know, within them, and knowing with some confidence that you have got an audience for it, you know, that it is viable, you know, and I think, you know, not shying, you know, and I'm not saying this to sort of take any of the sort of from the kind of pure creativity. Again, I see it as a way of hopefully kind of being quite freeing and enabling, you know, to think in that way.
Yeah. The other thing that I would add is that there's a brilliant report recently on the client side. One of the questions asked was about the location of their agency.
Yeah.
And they said that to 87% of people on the side that they didn't care where the agency was, which is a 20% jump from pre-COVID. And that tells that for us, as I say, we started with, okay, like we're going to always try and not give ourselves that mental limiter of we're only going to work in the UK, or only going to work in Scotland, or only going to work in Edinburgh. Is that it is wide open, and certainly either as a single practitioner who wants to work with agencies or consultancies or direct with clients, the doors are wide open. The same way that you would say, okay, where's my list of agencies in Edinburgh or Glasgow? There's no reason why within a certain time zone is our mindset. Let's start going out and looking elsewhere. The only thing that changes then is trust. So, we've just hired a designer in Barcelona. She started yesterday. We've known her from the past, but we trust her. We know that she's great. It doesn't matter where she lives and works. It works the other way around. So how do you show people that your portfolio is, one, great, and two, that clients have been trusted by clients and repeatedly delivered by clients, so that you're easy to be bought whenever you can't physically meet someone.
And I think, again, sorry, banging the drum about thinking commercially as well, just being able to have a kind of almost a business conversation around your work builds trust. We want to engage with great kind of creators, but we equally want to know that they understand the commitment that they're making, that they understand the budget, that they understand timescales, that they can communicate effectively, communicate well with us. So I think things like the program that you're running, sorry, I forget the name of it.
Raise Your Game.
Yeah, Raise Your Game is fantastic. I think to have that power in your track to support and amplify your work is really, really valuable.
Yeah, we've had some great feedback so far, so it's good to hear that people are finding. Yes, thank you, Nathan. But I think everything you're talking about here is totally. It's kind of, everything is so abstract because we're all figuring everything out all the time. But it's maintaining those conversations, it seems, that is the crux of the creative process, and continuing to look at and building the future that we want, I think, as an industry. So I think through the works that you're doing at CreateFuture, that's a really fantastic example and great place to start for many companies, I think. We've got some questions, so I'm really keen to get them out. Kath's got them waiting, so I'm going to pass over to Kath.
Hi. Yeah, we've had a few really good questions come in.
Give Dave the difficult ones.
I'm actually gonna lead with Leah's question, because it kind of follows on from that what we were talking about, that hybrid physical digital sprints and how these might work. So she's wondering how, with a physical group in a room and a store manager maybe on Zoom from Sydney, do you have any, she says, how the heck would that work? So have you got any sense of how these kind of hybrids might work for these sorts of interactions?
Is that Leah McDowell by any chance?
Yes.
Everyone's trying to work this out. Every single business magazine, website, Harvard Business Review just this month did an entire magazine on it, is trying to work this out. And nobody really knows. All we know is that there's probably going to be a lot of confusion in the interim while everyone gets it wrong a little bit. The jokes are flying that we're all going to move back to cubicles inside offices with everyone sitting on video calls. There are digital tools that are going to help. We're already seeing things like, we use Miro a lot, which is a digital whiteboarding tool. They're working with Post-it in order to try and blend the physical and the digital world. I think my personal view is that we'll come together a lot for really important moments, and that will start to become something that's quite special, and it will change the nature of the physical office and what it's used for, so that it is a place where humans talk to each other rather than being on video calls, hopefully. And there's the thing that is that there's a truth behind it that businesses aren't really talking about whenever they put their press releases out, is that offices are really bloody expensive. And the HR stuff that comes along with getting people to come in and out of offices is really expensive. So if we can get it right, that people can work from wherever they want and they can come together to collaborate, then we're only going to benefit from it.
I mentioned this work that we're doing with the law firm, and we've sort of done a lot of research into this, and there's fraught with so many issues. Location bias. It's very difficult for junior and younger members of the team who are then assumed that they're going to just run the PowerPoint and not be involved in the chat. It's harder to interject and interrupt when you're on a Zoom call. So a lot of it is going to come down to a bit of, it's not going to happen overnight, but education and into respect, you know, and awareness, and just entering these meetings mindfully. And that is the big piece of work that we're doing, is just to remind of these principles of, you know, meeting in the middle, like meeting in person when you need to, meeting mindfully. It's going to take time, as Dave says. A lot of mistakes, I think, will be made, but the companies that crack it will have the best of both worlds. You know, you'll be able to collaborate together in person, but you'll also have access to anybody, anytime, anywhere in the world. You know, and in any system, that people are the most flexible and the most networks wins, right? So, you know, there's value in investing in it and getting it right.
Totally. Oh, that sounds like a positive outlook on that. I really hope that we can get to that point at some point as well.
Well, yeah, as a kind of events producer, it's making me think about it in a different light. So I think that's a really valuable way to frame it.
And holograms as well, of course, holograms.
Of course, holograms.
I'm a hologram right now.
Amazing. Right, we have a couple more questions. So Dave Sage asked, and these are all to, I think, both of you. How has your sense of reward in your work changed moving online, and how important is / was the face-to-face in your sense of purpose?
I'll go with that one, because I've really struggled this year. I'm an extrovert in that I get my energy from working with other people. There are people in the company who are definitely introvert, who love putting their headphones on, working on their own on a task, and you know, and then it's still, you know, everybody it was comfortable collaborating, but there's some people that I struggled. I really struggled, and I've been through some kind of personal changes in the last 12 months. So I spent a lot of time on my own as well. So working, you know, 18 hours in a room, you know, getting up and working, and then in the same evening, it's also killed my, you know, it killed my creative vibes as well. Like in the evening, a lot of the stuff, I like making music, for instance, and I just didn't want to look at another screen in the evening. So I had to have a word with myself, because this was dragging on, you know, and really look at like what I could do to get enjoyment out of work. And it was asking for help. Dave and I are in a bubble, so I, you know, go and work over with Dave in person. So I got my hugs, you know. So I think you just have to, and I'm so delighted that we've actually started to have like up to 3 to 4 people able to go into the studio now. So hopefully that will come. So it came from being quite self-aware that I was not enjoying the way things were going, and putting some of those kind of coping measures in place. Ask for help, you know, and ask to collaborate with people, even if it is over Zoom. Go for walks with people. But then in terms of my sense of reward over the long term, you know, I get massive fulfillment from growing this brand and this company, and the people we work with, and the challenges we come on. But primarily for me, it's the people that we've managed to recruit and that have chosen to work with us. We have some incredibly talented people. We have some people who are kind of mid-career, who could go anywhere and choose to come with us. And then we have others who like Gareth, for instance, was our first person who joined us 4 years ago, and he's just blossomed, flourished, and it's great to see him learning through the experiences that we're able to afford to him. And that's just continually rewarding. You just never really get bored of that.
Yeah. I would agree that mine's the opposite. Whenever the first lockdown happened, it was an absolute bleep show, because I had 2 little girls, and almost the opposite problem. I had no sense of self anymore. You know, you got out of bed, the wave of morning happened, then you came into work. There's no downtime in between the two. So whenever you left your computer, you carried that stress with you, and you never really felt like you had just a sense of self. There was never a time where you felt like you weren't just a servant to what was happening to you. That thankfully, I think this time around, this last lockdown started to maybe take a bit more control of it, and see a bit more structure around it, and hopefully other people who are on the call felt that they got a little bit more control this time around as well. I mean, some benefits were that we you know, whenever we did start getting that sense of self, was that we started planning, like, okay, when this comes out, we've got to come out with a bit more energy. You know, we've got to plan forward. We've got to feel like this is we're going to come out of this, and we're going to come out having learned new things and stronger than we were before. And it does feel that way. It does feel like we've learned a lot.
Spring.
It's definitely, I've noticed the evolution from this lockdown compared to the last ones, and even just not scheduling as many Zooms and doing walking meetings, and it just frees up your brain so much than in the first way, where we just all went really hard really quick because that was all we kind of thought to do. Great. Well, we have 2 more questions to squeeze in. So I'm going to ask Jessica's, and then I'm going to go back to Sarah's because I think it's a nice one to end on. But Jessica was asking about how these new ways of working, so again, these hybrid events, benefit some of the people you work with. I think it's a good question to ask around digital events and things.
How do they benefit some of the people we work with?
Yeah, as in the style, method of working, and if so, who does it benefit?
You know, again, I'm going to refer to the work we're doing with Freshfields, like should I drop the name maybe, but still, it's fine. We're a big legal firm. A lot of their staff love the new way of working, you know, that it's afforded them, you know, to spend more time with their family, to kind of cut out their commute, to work in the way that works for them, which sometimes if you maybe more introverted or you've got deep thinking tasks, you know, so the new hybrid way of working works for a lot of people. And if we can get, as I said before, if we can get collaboration right, you know, it's the best of both worlds. You know, particularly, you know, if we can crack, you know, and there's no location bias. You know, you have an equal share of voice, regardless of where you are in your career, the hours that you choose to work or where you choose to work from. As I say, if we can get that right, and there are huge benefits. The biggest thing I'm concerned about, you know, is people in the earlier stages of their career. That really concerns me. People who've entered the job market, you know, in the last 18 months, you know, just not getting that always on mentorship and the opportunity to observe and to show what you're capable of in that environment, you know, where you're just by osmosis learning. I think that is the real that's going to be the real struggle, and I really hope that you know, that as things that the organisations recognise that and give you know, younger entrants to the job markets the same opportunities that people are established will have.
Yeah, and find new ways to do mentorship, because it's so much of our careers were learned through osmosis, for just being around and seeing how people behave with each other, and by that one person or people who push you to say, okay, Dave, go talk now. You know, I was total introvert and needed people to go on, Dave, go and do that, or just drop you in the deep end, you know. And also at that age, I still do, you know, you ruminate so much, you worry about things that you probably don't really need to worry about. And that's harder whenever you're not around other people who go, it's okay, don't worry, come go for a coffee. You know, it needs a little bit of that. Was the question about collaboration as in the design thinking processes we do you think? Or?
I think so. It was the new way of working and how it benefits some people you work with. So I guess it's what you're saying, but also, you know, how people respond to maybe, I think you started to mention it earlier, Nathan, about people who were maybe earlier stage, who was sharing the PowerPoint in the workshop in design thinking. Everyone is encouraged to chip in equally, aren't they? And do these Zoom spaces help or hinder that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a very democratic process, and it's one of the reasons we love it. You know, there are many little techniques and tricks as you go through the week to try and democratize the process, and to remove the hippo, you know, the highest paid person's opinion from the process, which is again one of the reasons we love it. And we get better results and better outcomes because ideas are coming in from everywhere. And one of the most satisfying things through the course of the year, I remember working with Tesco Bank, and you know, somebody on day one who was in the team who we really had to coax to get involved, you know, really had to keep coming back to saying, what do you think? Anything to add here? And it was was hard work. And then seeing by the end of the week, you know, that they were standing up, they were kind of presenting, they were offering, they were taking the lead, you know, and you know, presenting back to really senior stakeholders in the business, and because they got that confidence over the week, because they've been through the process, and they've been listened to, and they'd seen how valuable their contributions were, so they were very, very willing to stand up and present them. And that, when you see that, that's really, really satisfying.
One technique that brings it to light, which is the art gallery, where whenever everyone has gone off and come up with their ideas, they do it in silence, and they do it on a piece of A4 paper, kind of like a storyboard, and you put it up on the walls. And often we'll have somewhere between 50 and 100 ideas up on a wall, and everyone goes around and just with little dots marks the ideas or the parts of ideas that they think are brilliant. And that person who was quiet in the room is always the one that has the, you know, their idea shine. And because the people haven't talked through the ideas, you don't know who they are, and because you're voting in silence, there's just some lovely natural techniques like that stop some of those hippo problems. But it's also repeatable and learnable, which is great because it helps people who are either left brain or right brain. They both can understand why you're doing it. It removes the subjectivity of design, which I think is crippling for our industry, where, you know, as creatives, we lose sight of our brief, and then we end up just throwing ideas out until something sticks at a wall. We burn through time, we burn through budget, we burn through an emotional energy. It removes a lot of those problems. It does help you to think a little bit more about caring for your team, because you all want to run at the same pace, and you're all responsible for the problem. So that flat nature starts to create a much more healthy environment for creativity. And it starts to make it a bit more practical minded, because as you get to the point of showing it to the end customer, you have to think about how you're going to make it. Like, trust me, I absolutely hate more than anything in the world whenever we have an amazing idea and it never gets made. That is just a horrible, horrible feeling, especially whenever Nathan then will email me 3 years later and go, someone just did it. Like, nah. So there are all reasons why putting out a really good structured process around creativity just helps, and it makes it more commercial as well, especially for us when we first started the business, because we said, like, it's 5 days at a time, this is how much it costs. It's a box. So yeah.
I think it's such a valuable concept to speak to our community about as well, because they're all sitting on this pot of creativity, and actually, this is being harnessed in you know, bigger teams and bigger groups. So actually, there's ways that can be harnessed by a freelancer working independently or a partnership, right?
100%, and that's exactly the language that we use. You know, creativity is there to be harnessed. You know, it's there to add value. It's there to free up your team. You know, to unlock the potential in your team, unlock the potential in your business. And again, one of the other things, again, I'm not going to mention any names here, is, you know, a client we spoke to recently was struggling with retention of their team. And it was because their team didn't feel that they were doing good creative work. They weren't working on stuff that mattered. And this doesn't mean to say that there's opportunity, you know, and so investing those people, you know, give them the opportunity to be creative, to do work that matters, and to drive value for the business. Everybody wins, you know. So, and that's what we, you know, hope that we are here to do. You know, not just to answer the questions externally, but to build that belief in teams that they can do it themselves and enjoy their work more and feel more valued as a result, more valued and valuable.
A nice segue to the final question, actually, on creativity. So I'll ask this question and I'll hand back over to Anna to round up. But Sarah asked to each of you, what have you learned from the time in lockdown as a creative and individual?
Mine, really quickly, is that you need to look after your whole self. You need to invest in, you know, find what works for you, but, you know, do your yoga, eat well, go for your morning walk, connect with your friends. You know, it's so important to look after your whole self, because unless you've got that supporting framework around you, you know, your creativity or your productivity or whatever field it is that you're in is going to suffer. And it doesn't come naturally. You know, you have to concertedly map out what are the things that give you life, and you need to invest in it.
Yeah. I think mine's the people that you surround yourself with. are so important. You know, at the end of the day, what you do in your creative career really should matter most to you. You know, the legacy that you leave behind of you know, the joy that you brought into the world, or the small changes that an impact that you managed to make, are really only apparent to people. And so how you help other people, and how the people around you help you to be a bit more confident, to create belief in yourself. You know, if you don't have them around you, then it's very, very hard to do that. And that's what I was talking about earlier on, about, you know, just that being in isolation or ruminating by yourself. You need a book to give you that energy and give you that belief.
Thank you both. What a nice way to end. I think that's such a kind of positive and practical approach to the end of this. I think people can really take those things away and think about how they can introduce some of those into their practices and daily routines.